Okay, okay then. I don't know why I just stuttered. Everything should be recording properly. Mic is unmuted. Everything should be ready to go. So, hello everyone. Welcome back to r/nosleep. I have found a few stories that I want to read. All about hiding. Because I feel like it's kind of scary to have to hide and not know what you're hiding from. So I'm not good with intros, so let's just get right into it with the first story. Attention shoppers, please hide at the back of the store immediately. This is by Blair Daniels, who writes a bunch of really good stories. Attention shoppers, came a male voice over the intercom. Please move to the back of the store immediately. The back of the store, I whispered to Daniel. Don't they mean the front of the store to pay for our stuff? It was 8:50 p.m., 10 minutes till closing time. We brought our two kids out on this late-night Walmart excursion in the hopes of burning off some energy. Instead, they just thrown tantrums for new Legos and Hot Wheels. It was a disaster, but apparently the disaster was just beginning. Please move to the back of the store immediately, the voice repeated overhead. This is not a drill. I glanced around, but the other shoppers were just as confused as I was. An old lady looked up at the ceiling, scrunching her face. What the hell? A dark-haired woman asked her boyfriend, pushing a cart full of garden supplies. Didn't you hear? An older man said, leading over his cart of bottled water and canned food. We're in a tornado watch. One touchdown in Sowerville. Tornado? It was definitely storming outside. I'd seen the black clouds roll in from the east earlier, but it didn't look that bad. Do not stay out in the open. I repeat, do not stay out in the open. There was a pause, then an explosion of sound as everyone began to mobilize. Carts rolling, panicked voices, feet slapping on the floor. No, this can't be happening. I hurried down the toy aisle, Tucker in my arms. Daniel and Jackson following me. 3 zigzaggy turns, and then we were in the electrics area. I glanced at the TVs on the wall and pictured the 4 of us crushed underneath them. Stay away from windows and doors, the voice continued on the loudspeaker, and do not attempt to exit the store. Is it safe here? Daniel shook his head. Big open areas aren't good. I'm gonna check in back, see if there's a break room or something. You stay here, okay? I nodded. Arms shaking, I sat down on the ground between 2 shelves of video games. Tucker sucked down a bottle in my arms while Jackson began to giggle. Is the tornado going to hit the store and everything will fly around real fast? He asked with a big stupid grin on his face. I don't know. A tornado. A real-life tornado, like you see in the movies, plowing through our town. It was so unfathomable. We were New York natives, transplanted here to Indiana only 6 months ago. I'd never been in a tornado watch my entire life. I have. It's very scary. Daniel jogged back to the view. Everything's locked up, he said as he joined me on the floor. But listen, Fairview's a big town. The chances that it'll hit this Walmart, I think we'll be okay. I never should have brought us here. You didn't know. None of us did. He wrapped his arm around me. They should have warned us, like an emergency alert on our phones, or a tornado siren, or something. The voice overhead rang out through the store. Do not stay out in the open. Do not make yourself visible. That includes security cameras. Please move to a spot that is not visible to any cameras. I frowned. What does that have to do with tornadoes? A feeling of unease in the pit of my stomach. I glanced up and saw several black globes descending from the ceiling, hiding the cameras within. I guess we should listen to them and get out of sight, I whispered. I grabbed Jackson's hand, Daniel picked up Tucker, and we jogged out into the center aisle. The store was an eerie sight, abandoned shopping carts, askew in the aisle, full of everything from pies to batteries to plants. Footsteps echoed around the store from people unseen as they found their new hiding places. We dodged a shopping cart full of soda, ran through kitchenwares, and then stopped in the Easter decoration aisle. There was a camera in the central corridor, but as long as we stayed in the middle of Easter aisle, we'd be invisible. The four of us crouched on the floor next to some demented-looking Easter bunnies. I'm hungry, Jackson whined. Shh, Mommy! I grabbed a bag of colorful chocolate eggs and ripped it open. Here, candy. Happy? I whispered, thrusting them into his hands. Then I leaned back against the metal shelves, panting, but I didn't have long to rest. A mechanical whine overhead, and then the voice came through the speakers again. Keep away from aisles with food. If you have food with you, leave it and move to a new hiding place. If you have any open wounds, cover them with clothing. What the fuck? That had nothing to do with keeping safe in a tornado. We should make a run for it, Daniel whispered to me, starting to stand. But the tornado? I don't think there is a tornado. Listen, do you hear any wind? I listened, but all I heard was silence. No howling wind, no shaking ground, no projectiles clanging against the metal roof. Maybe it's still coming. I know what they're saying doesn't make sense, but to go outside, we need to get out of here, now. He grabbed Jackson's hand as he held Tucker in his arms. Come on. Daniel, I don't think that's a good idea, I whispered. But the next words from the intercom changed my mind. Assume a fetal position and place your hands on your head. Close your eyes and do not open them for any reason. Let's go. We broke into a sprint and ran down the central aisle, cameras be damned. The front door appeared in front of us, a little black rectangle looming in the distance. And as we got closer, I saw Daniel was right. There was a tree at the border of the parking lot under a street lamp. It was perfectly still. We continued running, past the clothing area, past the snacks lined up at the checkout lines. I ran towards the sliding glass doors as fast as my legs would carry me. Almost there, almost there, almost... The doors didn't open. No! Daniel slammed his body against the door. It rattled underneath him. I tried to squeeze my fingers into the gap between them to try and pull them apart. They didn't budge. They locked us in, I whispered. I want to go home, Jackson said. Tucker was beginning to fuss too, making little noises like he was about to start full-on wailing. I turned around, and that's when I saw him. A Walmart employee. He was sitting on the ground at the end of one of the checkout aisles, facing away from us, wearing the familiar blue vest with the golden starburst. Hey, let us out! He didn't reply. Did you hear me? I don't care if there's a fucking tornado. Unlock the door and let us out. Again, he said nothing. But in the silence, I could hear something. A wet smacking sound. I stared at the man, slightly hunched over, still facing away from me. Was he eating something? The speaker overhead crackled to life. Attention! Please do not talk to any Walmart employees. My blood ran cold. The smacking sound stopped, and then, slowly, the man began to stand. He placed his palms on the conveyor belt and pushed up. I can see that they were stained in blood. I backed away, but my legs felt like they were moving through a vat of honey. No. Fingers locked around my arm and yanked. Come on, Daniel shouted. I sprinted after him, deeper into the store. Tucker stared at me over his shoulder, and Jackson ran as fast as his little feet would take him. I was vaguely aware of the slap, slap, slap sound behind me, but I didn't dare look back. Daniel ran into the clothing area, and I swayed, dodging circular racks of t-shirts and wooden displays of baby clothes. He skidded to a stop and ducked into the dressing room area. In here, he whispered, motioning at one of the rooms. We piled inside and locked the door. Daddy? You listen to me very carefully, I said, crouching to his level. You have to be absolutely silent. Do not say a word, okay? Jackson looked at me, then Daniel. Then he nodded and sat down on the floor. I'm going to try to call 911, Daniel whispered, transferring Tucker to me and pulling out his phone. He tapped at the screen, then frowned. What? We don't seem to have any service. Thump. I grabbed Jackson and pulled him away from the door. The four of us huddled in the corner. I held my breath. Thump. Okay, I'm going to turn down the music a little bit. There we go. I think that's better. I'm not entirely sure of the audio, so if it's a bit loud, I apologize. It's really hard to gauge whether or not the audio is good or not. I grabbed Jackson and pulled him away from the door. The four of us huddled in the corner. I held my breath. Thump. Under the gap of the dressing room door, men's feet in black shoes. They slowly took a step forward, deeper into the dressing room. Don't move, I whispered, holding Jackson. The man took another step. Don't make a sound. Don't move. Don't. Tucker let out a soft cry. Damn it, Tucker! The man stopped, his feet turned, pointing at us. No, 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 no. Tucker let out another cry, louder this time. My nails dug into Daniel's hand. No, a hand appeared. It slowly pressed against the floor, stained with blood, and then his knees appeared as he lowered himself down to the gap. No. Could he fit under? The gap wasn't small. It was like the stall door to a bathroom. If he flattened himself against the floor, there's a chance he could fit under. I watched in horror as his stomach came into view. His blue Walmart vest as he lowered his body to the floor. Then he pushed his arm under the gap and blindly swept it across the floor. Why do I have a feeling this is going to lead up to something where it never happened and you're just dreaming of it? As if feeling for us. This is it. We're going to die. And then he lowered his head. His face. Oh God, there was something horribly wrong with his face. He smiled up at us with a smile that was impossibly wide, showing off blood-stained teeth. His skin was so pale it was nearly blue, and his eyes, they were milky white without pupils or irises. Attention shoppers, the voice began overhead. No, no, no. Please make your way to the front of the store and make your final purchases. We will be closing in 10 minutes. What? And then before I could react, something unseen jerked the man out of view. A strange dragging sound followed, as if someone was dragging his body out of the dressing room area. I stared at the door, shaking as Tucker's cries rang in my ears. But he didn't come back. And within 10 minutes, the usual hubbub of Walmart returned. Voices, footsteps, shopping cart wheels, rolling along the floor. Shaking, I finally got up and unlocked the door. The store looked completely normal. People lined up at the cash registers, placing their goods on the conveyor belts. Employees were scanning tags, printing receipts. People walked towards the glass doors, and when they did, they slid open. As we slowly walked towards the exit, I spotted the older man who warned us about the tornado earlier. What was that? I asked, unable to keep my voice from shaking. He shrugged. I guess the tornado missed us. What a miracle, huh? Giving us a smile, he disappeared out the glass doors and into the night. Oh, I have read this before. This story was sponsored by Target. That's good. It's weird because why would this happen? And did times stop? Overall, it's and that never really happened. And it's was she just imagining it? It's very strange, but I didn't realize I've read this story before because obviously I've uploaded this, but weird. It's a very weird story. But anyways, that's story number 1. Let's move on to story number 2. If you see a searchlight too soon and after capsizing in the North Pacific Ocean, hide. A few years ago, I was working as a deckhand on an Alaskan fishing boat. From a young age, my parents instilled in me a strong work ethic. They always said hard work leads to greater returns, so I naturally gravitated towards a career that shared that philosophy. Alaskan fishing added high risks to the equation, and in return, the rewards were even sweeter. I couldn't imagine doing anything else and planned on working my way up to captain one day. The story takes place during my 5th crabbing season. But then I knew the ropes. I was familiar with the waters, and I'd witnessed a few deaths firsthand. I thought I was prepared for anything. I was dead wrong. We were a crew of 15, myself included, when the season began. That number would be halved by the time we returned to shore, and I would be left incapable of setting foot anywhere near the ocean ever again. I was sailing on the seaward Sarah, a vessel that was getting a little long in the tooth, but was unknown for her reliability. Since she passed her safety inspection earlier that year, I had no concerns as we left port for the cold waters of the North Pacific Ocean. It was exhilarating to be on the sea again. With the fresh, salty breeze and water so vast, you couldn't see anything but blue for miles around. Spirits were high, and the excitement of starting off on a new journey was electric. We always hold a party on the first and last nights. It was tradition. Even the captain would join in and dance and sing and drink. We noticed the first sign of trouble 2 days into the journey. The seaward sailor was listing on her starboard side. It wasn't at a dangerous angle, and after consulting the ship's engineer, the captain determined it was safe to proceed further into the North Pacific Ocean. He planned on balancing her out once we started loading crabs into the cargo decks. We'll overfill the port cargo and underfill the starboard. I didn't question the plan. It seemed reasonable, and besides, I was just a deckhand. The captain could piss in my mouth and tell me it was wine, and I'd smile and agree. That's the way it works at sea. I grew more concerned as the voyage went on. The list worsened over the course of the next week. It went from a barely noticeable incline to my calves burning from straining against the pull of gravity towards starboard. That's when the captain started making a lot of calls. I couldn't hear what was going on, but I could see him shouting into the receiver, his face getting redder and angrier as the days wore on. I was told he was cursing everyone from the ship manufacturer to the inspectors to the contractors who'd last done repair work on her hull. I was told it was business as usual. One evening, when most of us were gathered in the dining hall, holding our plates and glasses to keep them from sliding down the table, the captain burst in and announced we were turning around. Our reactions were mixed, with some experiencing relief and others disappointment. No one knew what this meant for our wages or whether the repairs could be done in time to get back to sea before the end of crab season. Me? I was one of the ones who was relieved by the news. The vast ocean I'd been yearning for months had become progressively more unsettling as the ship tilted. I became keenly aware just how far away I was from dry land, from safety. This place I found freeing suddenly felt like a cage, and I wanted out. I felt the seaward sailor turn as I headed back to the crew quarters and used the wall for support. The combination of the dime turn and the ship's tilt were terrible for my equilibrium. I needed to lay down and let myself adjust. I don't know what would have happened if the storm hadn't hit later that night. Would the seaward sailor have limped home safely? Would she have rolled over along the way, I should say. I'll never know now because the storm did hit. One that seemed to come out of nowhere, barely being caught by the radar before its waves and rain started pelting the ship with the fury of an angry sea god. The seaward sailor groaned in pain as our list worsened even more. Doors flew open, objects fell and hit me as I staggered up the hall and towards the deck. I didn't realize just how bad it had gotten until I felt my feet touch the wall and realized the wall was becoming the floor. I was still inside when I heard the call to abandon ship. I was bruised, groggy, and disoriented. Enough water had gotten in from somewhere that I was also soaked. I felt a pair of hands grab me by the shoulder and usher me forward when I stopped to take a breath. I know at some point I donned a life vest, but I couldn't tell you when or how I got it on. All I remember is the surreal sensation of the world changing directions inside the ship, and the sight of tall waves illuminated by lightning once outside. Thunder drowned out the screams of my shipmates, but I could see them scrambling to launch a lifeboat. I threw myself towards them, but before I could catch the handful, I felt a wall of ice-cold water dragging me into the railing. A second wave, the reaction to its action, reached over the rail and pulled me into the water. The pain was unbearable. Not only had I been tossed around like a rag doll, but the water I felt like I'd rolled into a vat of quicksand made of sharp needles. I didn't know which side was up and which was down, but thankfully the life vest lifted me back to the turbulent surface. The water had gotten into my ears, muffling the sound of the storm. I tried to flail my arms, hoping for rescue, but I couldn't lift them. I couldn't stop threading water long enough. This hell went on for longer than I cared to reflect on. I just know wave after wave pulled me under, but the jacket always brought me back up long enough to catch my breath. When I closed my eyes, even years later, I could still feel the unrelenting assault of the waves mingling with the taste of salt on my tongue. I was going to die, I was sure of it, either by not breathing in when I had a chance or by drowning from rainwater in my mouth whenever I screamed. But then I felt a tug. My horror amplified tenfold as I imagined being in the jaws of a sea serpent about to pull me into the ocean depths. I thrashed, desperately trying to escape, only to hear Greta's voice chastising me. "Stop that, I'm trying to pull you in." Greta hoisted me onto the lifeboat. and once I was over the edge, I slipped the rest of the way in, landing in wet and bloody water. I could hear orders being shouted at me, but all I could do was curl up and wait, utterly useless. I know the others were preoccupied by something, as they started rowing as hard as they could. In hindsight, I think they were trying to get clear of the whirlpool of the sinking ship. The storm passed almost as quickly as it arrived. The ocean wasn't as quick to calm, but the turbulence lessened to a manageable degree. When I was finally able to, I sat up and took inventory of my surroundings. I found myself in a lifeboat with 7 other crewmates. All that was left of the seaward sailor were bubbles rising from the depths of the ocean. Miraculously, there was a second lifeboat paddling towards us, and once we connected, we were overjoyed to find out that every single crew member had survived the capsizing. The captain, who was in the other raft, shouted over the water in a deep booming voice, "We sent out a distress call before she went down. They have our coordinates. It won't be long." I hoped he was right, because my hands were trembling from the cold and the quickly depleting adrenaline. We tied the rafts down, took stock of our supplies, food, first aid, and then waited. Now, you would think that there would be cheering when the light appeared on the horizon. That music! That all hands would start to paddle and wave and celebrate. Instead, there was a sudden and deathly silence as a communal swell of anxiety filtered into us. There were haunted expressions on Greta and John and Sarai and even the captain's faces. The latter was holding the flare gun, but his finger was tapping nervously on the trigger. Sometimes, without knowing why, you get a bad feeling. People call it a sixth sense, but I think it's simpler than that. I think it's dangers perceived, but bypassed by the brain so you can act faster than you can think. Kind of like how you can actively analyze a person's body language to get more information than you get from hearing their words alone. But even if you're not trying to, you still subconsciously notice a little sign showing discomfort or anger or attraction. It's innate. What we think we perceive is only scratching the surface of all the information we truly take in. The brain, our consciousness, focuses on one thing, but our survival instinct notices the other discrepancies. And when it does, it signals danger without telling you why. "It's not moving," Greta whispered. She hit the nail on the head. She connected the dots outlining the proverbial red flag. When she did, a sort of unspoken acknowledgement traveled through the group as one by one we noticed it too. You see, there were 2 problems with the light. The nearest ship to ours was at least another 5 hours away, probably longer if they hit the same storm we had. 2, the light was perfectly still, staying at the same height, never once bobbing along with the ocean surge. It also wasn't sweeping the ocean as one does when searching for survivors. You see, it had appeared way too fast, only about half an hour after the storm had passed. It was extremely unlikely that an unknown ship had been in the area. We all try to keep tabs on one another because in such turbulent waters, knowing where everyone is a question of life and death. Yes, we're technically all competing against one another, but you'd be hard-pressed to find any seaman unwilling to drop everything to save another in a pinch. There's a code of honor we all follow, but suppose this was an unknown vessel responding to our distress call. We still had to contend with the second issue of its unnatural immobility. My stomach contorted, wondering what it meant. This light was fixed on a single point in the near distance. It was glowing, no, pulsating, but it never once moved on any sort of axis like it should if it was searching the water. And it was immune to the push and pull of ocean waves. There's not a ship on Earth that can do that. The only reasonable explanation was it might be a Coast Guard helicopter hovering perfectly in place and dangerously low. But then again, even if it had been deployed the second the distress call was sent, a rescue chopper couldn't have gotten to us that fast. The light was impossible. The light felt menacing. The light acted like a lure, goading us to come to it. The boom of an explosion snapped me to reality, and it was followed by a crackle up above. The captain had fired off one of the flares. It hung in the air, slowly fizzing in a downward arch. I remember feeling so scared, I dug my fingers into the lifeboat. The shot was one thing, but my fear had to do with the light. I was so afraid it would come closer now that it knew for sure where we were. I was more afraid of that light than I had ever been of anything in my entire life, but thankfully it stayed away. "Whoa!" the captain ordered. No one moved, not even to breathe. "Whoa, damn it!" John reached for the paddle, but Greta grabbed him by the forearm and stopped him, shaking her head. The captain glared at us with bulging eyes. He had adopted an authoritative state, but even if he wasn't able to suppress his quakes of fear, if one followed logic, he was right. We should head towards the light. And yet, the longer we stared at the unwavering thing, the more it unsettled us. It's funny how something as simple as bobbing up and down could have alleviated our anxiety, but the light didn't do that, not even once. Faced with a soft immunity, the captain grumbled and grabbed a paddle of his own. "Fine," he hissed. "I'll go. Any man or woman too cowardly to come can transfer to the coward's raft." He gestured to us. "Anyone with balls, come with me. We need to flag that ship down before it moves on without us." The flare hit the water and spat out a few more dying embers. I was surprised to see a few crewmates get up. John and a couple others transferred over to the captain's raft. An equal number transferred to the coward's raft. With contempt on his sour, sea-worn face, the captain cut the lines between us and directed his raft towards the searchlight. Even as they rowed off, we pleaded with them not to go, but it was like they'd been infected with bravado. I could hear them chanting in a rhythm, "Left, right, left, right," until they were a blip on the horizon. 10 minutes after the voices went quiet, at the estimated time the captain's raft would have reached the light, it suddenly blinked out of existence. The captain, John, and the other 5 crewmates on that raft were never seen or heard from again. The raft has never turned up. This, despite being outfitted with an emergency tracker. Planes equipped with the same tech have gone missing as well, so it could be that those trackers aren't worth much, but it still gives me nightmares to think that what would have happened to me if we followed the captain. As for us, it took 7 hours, but eventually we were rescued by the crew of the Rose Shannon. As expected, the storm had delayed rescue attempts. They warmed us up and combed the waters where we'd last seen the captain's raft, abandoning the search only when the Coast Guard arrived and took over. That night, I had nightmares of the light growing closer and closer, and every time its glow was about to hit me, I'd felt a pressure in my head like it was about to explode, and a searing, burning pain on my skin. Then I'd wake up drenched in sweat. I now work as a trucker, a mercifully landlocked job. Well, that's not any better because, like, out in the middle of nowhere, like, there's a bunch of, like, aliens and whatnot. It's like, if you go down, like a certain, like, road, it's like, there's lights out on the horizon. It's like, it's not even, I would say it's not even better. I would say that's worse. Because no matter how far you run, you can't get away. But anyways, I drive through all kinds of creepy locations. I've seen some things on this job, but nothing has ever scared me more than the light I saw that terrible night. I don't know if it's because of the lack of closure around the captain's raft, or if my subconscious saw something that it felt my brain was better off not knowing. I don't know. I don't like to think about it, but now that I've written this, I think I can finally move on in a way. I still keep in touch with Greta. She's still working out there. Props to her for getting back on that seahorse. She now captains her own vessel. I couldn't be happier for her. But sometimes, when we're catching up, she talks about that night. She always follows it up by saying another ship's been lost in that same area. I think they're up to 5 now. No survivors, although the final transmission of one of the ships mentioned seeing a light on the horizon. Sailors have come to avoid what they're calling the Alaska Triangle. Part of me wishes I knew conclusively what is happening out there, but I'm mostly glad I'm here on solid ground, far from the light. Well, that's just another reason to be scared of the ocean, I guess. That's really creepy. I don't know if it was like aliens or something, or maybe it was just something that was part of the imagination, and then they like capsized again, like the raft like capsized, or maybe something happened and they found something they shouldn't have. I think the first story is probably a lot scarier, but I feel like this story, the one about the raft, is a lot more grounded in reality. And that's also really scary. It's interesting. But anyways, moving on. Don't play the Can You Hide game if it appears on your phone. You won't find it on Google Play or the App Store. There's nothing about the game on any public websites. Other than this cautionary post, it doesn't matter whether you're a good or a bad person, it indiscriminately chooses targets. The point is that you can't avoid the game. Nobody can. You might hear a reverberating ding from your phone, a death toll from the depths of hell. An incongruous window might pop up. Can you hide? Yes or no? Make sure you select no. When the window first appeared on my phone screen, I was stunned. I always presumed smartphones to be safer from the threat of viruses than computers, especially a brand new iPhone. Isn't Apple supposed to be superior to Microsoft when it comes to security? Who uses a Windows phone? What? Okay then. I think they're like trying to like say like Android, but Microsoft is not like part of that. I don't think it is anyways. Maybe, I don't know. Nice try, I said. But before I made a rash decision and ended up infecting my phone with something nasty, I decided to do some research. I'm not exactly computer savvy, but I didn't trust either the yes or no option. I didn't want to mess with the window in any way. There was nothing about the Can You Hide pop-up online. I didn't even realize it was a game until a Reddit user, who I won't name, pointed me in the direction of a Discord server for discussing unearthly matters. There was an entire category dedicated to the bizarre new game that had been appearing on people's phones. Clicking yes, apparently, commences a hide-and-seek game of unknown origin. I scrolled through the many Discord messages. I've removed the usernames. User 1. Can anyone help me? Nobody seems to know about this game. My friend played it non-stop for a week and then he went missing. That was 2 weeks ago. There were daily search parties, but I don't think they're gonna find him. He said it wasn't really a game. He said he saw a face outside his window. User 2. You have to select no. User 3. I destroyed my phone after reading these messages. Haven't seen or heard anything unusual. User 4. I selected no, but I keep hearing creaks, and I don't think it's in my head. User 6. I think they mixed it up accidentally. Just leave the pop-up window open, guys. You don't have to select anything. User 5. What? For the rest of my life? What if something accidentally knocks it? User 3. Oh, okay. Maybe they didn't switch them. User 3. Destroy your phone. Like I said, it worked for me. User 6. Until it pops up on your next phone. User 5. What if I just turn off my phone? That seems a little less dramatic than destroying it. User 3. Your funeral. I do like how it's like the ad on here is insidious. It's like that helps. So just saying this distorted body on the side. It is capturing that, right? Yeah, okay. I didn't remember if I cropped it or not. I did not, though. The more I read, the more anxious I felt. I had expected the pop-up window to be a virus, but everybody was telling ghost stories. Stop being a superstitious baby, I told myself. That guy's disappearance had nothing to do with the game he was playing. Eventually, after a week of horrified contemplation, I opted for User 5's idea to turn off my phone. In fact, I took it a step further and reset my phone to its factory settings. Well, that's probably not good. I met my friends Corey and Tanya in a local park on Monday afternoon. I'd planned to tell them about my experience, but they beat me to the punch. Why didn't you pick up your phone all weekend, Lee? Corey asked me. We were worried about you, man. We wanted to hang on Sunday. I didn't fancy third wheeling. Some of us have to go to work on Mondays, I replied. Hey, I work, Corey protested. From a bathrobe in your bedroom? Tanya smirked. You're both just envious that I can scroll through Reddit and play games away from the watchful eye of my employer, Corey said. Speaking of games, Lee, have you played Can You Hide? That's not good. My heart plummeted, and I felt as if Corey's words were cinder blocks, dragging my blood through the floorboards. He's obsessed, Tanya sighed. He's been playing it every day since Tuesday. It just popped up on my phone, so I thought, why the fuck not? Corey laughed. Tanya thought it must be a virus, but it's just a cool augmented reality game. Oh no. Corey thrust his phone down on the wooden picnic table. It was already open on a game window. A map of our surrounding area. A small green marker indicated Corey's location in the park. There was a small red marker moving along nearby roads. Once a day, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, the game takes place. I have to hide. It tracks my location in the real world, so I have to keep moving. I wanted to delay coming to the park, but I don't think the Red Seeker will find me here. Besides, it's 10 to 4. I nearly made it. Corey said. What's that red marker that's searching for you? I asked, shuddering. The boogeyman, Corey whispered. He laughed and Tanya thumped him on the arm. You know that kind of talk makes Lee freak out, Tanya scolded. Corey shrugged, and the pair of them became absorbed in a different topic of conversation. They were tucking into their sandwiches, talking between mouthfuls, but I wasn't eating. I couldn't take my eyes off Corey's phone on the table. The red marker was circling the park, looking for him. I couldn't stop thinking about those people on the Discord server who had spoken so solemnly of the supposedly deadly game. Suddenly, the marker was in the park. Corey was wrong. It had found him. I prepared for something dreadful to happen. I prepared for my friend to be caught. And that's a wrap, Corey said, scooping up his phone. 4 o'clock. Yet again, I bested the game. It got close this time, though. Damn, just 100 yards away. On the game map, the park was a featureless green patch. I could see Corey's green markers scarcely standing out from the grass. I could see the red marker northeast of our location. The victory box read, You avoided the creature by 121 yards. You can hide. Tanya groaned and mumbled about Corey's game addiction, and the two of them resumed their conversation. I was about to dive back into reality, putting the silly game out of my head for good, but a sudden noise terrified me. A creak. My eyes shut up from the table. Neither Tanya nor Corey seemed to notice the eerie noise, and I can't explain it. As nearby as the sound seemed, my eyes were drawn to a solitary tree, a little over 100 yards away. Perhaps not exactly where the red marker had appeared on Corey's screen, but close enough. Peering around the bark was a frightful face. The thing looking at the three of us was not human. It was as short as a toddler. Its head, if it even had a head, was wearing a peach-colored rubber mask, almost the tone of human flesh, but not quite, and a sickly sweet smile seared through my eyes into my very soul. With a second resounding creak, the nightmare's face snapped behind the bark, disappearing from view. Earth to Lee, Tanya said, giggling. You look like you've seen a ghost. I think something's actually seeking you, Corey, I whispered, pointing a shaky finger at the tree. I don't think you should play that game anymore. Your phasmophobia really kills my buzz sometimes, Lee, Corey sighed. There's no boogeyman following me. I have a proclivity for trembling at everyday sights and sounds. In my way, there's always a ghost or a ghoul around the corner. Ever since my parents died, I've been that way, but I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I hadn't imagined what I saw behind that tree. Unfortunately, my phasmophobia, fear of ghosts and the supernatural, makes it very difficult for anybody to believe me when I've been startled by something. Corey and Tanya told me to take it easy and get lots of rest. The following day, the two of them pinged me incessantly on WhatsApp. I was still reeling from the terrifying thing I'd seen behind the tree. Transfixed by terrible thoughts, the workday flew by. I was starting to believe that maybe I'd become unwell. Perhaps I'd suffer a psychotic break. Not so. Around 6:30 in the evening, on my drive home from work, Tanya called me. I answered via my car's dashboard. I'm driving right now, Tanya, I said. What? I trailed off when I heard my friend bawling her eyes out on the other end of the phone. It's in the house, she whispered. The game started playing. It's later than usual. Slow down, I replied. What's happening? The game started at 6, Tanya tearfully explained in a fragile whisper. I think you were right, Lee. I think someone's actually seeking us. We saw a horrible face at the window, and then there were creaking sounds in the house. We're hiding in the attic. Oh no, don't go up to the attic! Corey's pulled the door up so we don't think... Have you called the police? I interjected, heart pounding. They're on the way, Tanya said. 15 minutes. If we can What? It's Lee. No, I feel safer with someone on the other end of the... Okay, Corey wants me to hang up. He wants us to be quiet. Okay, I understand, I shakily replied. Just make sure... No, Tanya whimpered. I didn't need to ask what had frightened her. I heard it too. A creak in the attic. It sounded so clear, and once again, so near. So nightmarishly near that I snapped my neck around to make sure the rubber-faced demon wasn't in the backseat of my car. It wasn't. At that point, I decided not to go home. I diverted to Corey's house, an 8-minute journey, barely any quicker than the police. How did it even get here? Tanya whispered. I didn't even see the door open. It's not an it, Corey scoffed, though he spoke in a quivering voice. He's just a child, and he needs to leave our... Oh, what the fuck is that? Tanya screamed. Please, Corey began to plead. The screams of my two friends were deafening. I was so fixated reaching the house that I didn't hang up the call. It was only as I tore onto Corey's driveway, merely minutes before the police, that I realized I'd been listening to sounds of squelching, snapping, and most hauntingly of all, creaking. I barged down the front door and ran up to the attic. I expected to find a sickening scene of mutilation, but the space was empty. Corey and Tanya were gone. The police had questions for me, of course, but my alibi was airtight. The 999 call was made before I even left the office, and traffic camera footage corroborated the fact that I was on the road whilst the intruder terrorized Corey and Tanya. Missing persons. That's the verdict. I don't understand what the game wants. I don't know where the missing people go. All I know is that resetting my phone wasn't enough. On my drive home, after a long night of tears and police questioning, I could swear I caught a glimpse of a peach-colored mask peeking around a postbox. And then, if to confirm that menacing thought, there was a notification on my phone, that unmistakable ding of hell. The message displayed on my car dashboard. I moaned in horror, and that was what damned me. My car uses voice recognition, and somehow it registered my terrified vocal reaction as an answer. You selected no. Perhaps I've chosen the safer of the two options. I know many of the Discord users suggested no, but I can't stop thinking about what I read on that server. I selected no, but I keep hearing creaks. I haven't heard anything yet, and the game hasn't started playing, but Corey didn't seem to hear the creak when he was playing the game. Maybe like him, I've just been missing it. I'm terrified of the creaker. I'm terrified of where he might take me. Man, that's actually really creepy. That's the scariest one so far. Children. Very scary. But no, it's like being hunted by something that can just like snatch you up and like eat you or like drag you into like a pocket dimension or something. That's horrifying. Man. I'm gonna have nightmares tonight after that. That's the scariest one so far. I don't even want to go outside. But, man. Okay, one more. Parents, don't let your kids hide in clothes racks. About a month ago, my 5-year-old daughter, who I'll call Dee, got a sudden interest in photography. She probably saw someone with a camera on TV and decided that she wanted one. For 2 weeks, she begged us for a camera, and me and my husband decided that we wanted to support her in her interests. We bought her a simple and cheap digital camera and gifted it to her. We taught her how to use it, which wasn't much more than pointing and clicking, and told her that we would get her favorite photos printed. Dee took her camera everywhere with her and took pictures of everything. We often had to delete a lot of blurry photos to make room for more. She was very good at following rules too, such as don't take other people's pictures without their permission, don't point the camera at the sun, and always wear the wrist strap. Me and my husband were very proud and hoped that we were raising a future photographer. Last week I had a day off, so I decided to run some errands. I brought Dee along since my husband was at work and there was no one to watch her. She didn't mind though, as long as she could bring her camera, she was happy. We ran by the post office, the bank, and lastly a large clothing store, as I needed a new blouse for a party that was coming up. Dee and I walked inside and she instantly started to snap pictures of some sparkly dresses. I mostly ignored her as I looked around, keeping her in the corner of my eye. I looked through some shirts on one of those round racks and Dee decided to push through them and duck inside. She did this often, as many kids do. She giggled away and I let her be and looked around at some other racks. After a few minutes, I called her, wanting to move on to a different section. She didn't answer me. "Come on, Dee, you can't stay in there," I said. I couldn't hear any giggling and she wasn't responding. I walked over to the rack and spread the shirts to look inside. Dee wasn't there. I called out to her, telling her to come to me. I looked around, but couldn't see her anywhere. This is where I started to panic a little. I had been keeping my eyes on that rack and knew that I didn't see her come out, but she had to be close by. I quickly walked around the area, looking inside other racks and calling out to her more. She was nowhere, and I started to really panic. I rushed to the checkout counter nearby and asked the cashier if she had seen her. "Is your child missing?" the cashier asked me. I told her the situation, and she spoke into the microphone on her collar. "We have a missing child, most recently seen in women's formal." My heart was beating so fast, and I could feel that my face was red. I was embarrassed, worried that I looked like a terrible mom, but as long as Dee was found, it would all be okay. "The other employees are searching the store for her now. Can you tell me what she looks like?" the cashier asked me. I told her, and she repeated it into her microphone. "Okay, ma'am, thank you. We have security by the front door to make sure she doesn't leave the store," she said. I didn't even want to think about the possibility that someone could take her. I went to look some more, calling out Dee's name, telling her that she wasn't in trouble and to just come out. Dee was always so well behaved. She never ran off like this. 20 minutes went by, and I was in full panic mode, with tears forming in my eyes. Suddenly, I heard crying. I recognized it as Dee instantly. I followed it, running across the store. I came to the same round rack that Dee had hidden inside initially. I looked inside, and sure enough, there she was. I pulled it out as she sobbed and picked her up. I assumed that she had gone back inside the rack when I wasn't looking. I asked her if she was alright when she was crying. "There was nobody," she said. I was confused and asked her what she meant. "Nobody anywhere." I didn't know what she was talking about, so I asked her again. "All alone." She was in hysterics. I pet her head and went back to the checkout and told the cashier that I had found her. She told her microphone that Dee had been found and called off the search. I was relieved but worried. Did a stranger try to take her, or did she get lost for a bit? I took her home and put her in bed for a nap and told my husband what had happened when he got home. Why do I have a feeling? Like, I'm gonna make a prediction before I finish this story up. Why do I have a feeling that Dee was taken by something and she has a picture of it? Or somebody. Later that night, Dee was doing better. I asked her if I could see her photos from that day, as it always cheered her up when me and my husband looked at them. She gave me her camera and I scrolled through the photos. There were some of the post office, some of the bank, and lots of photos of clothes. I cannot explain the last few photos. It was the clothing store, except there were no people. That didn't make sense, as if there were lots of people in the store when we were there. There were lots of photos of the empty store, even one at the checkout counter without the cashier there. She had taken a photo of the front door and several of the parking lot. The parking lot was empty. There were no cars, no people, nothing. You could see the street and there was no traffic in sight. No wonder Dee had cried so hard. She was all by herself, someplace where there were no people. I don't know where Dee had gone, but I worry every day now. What if somehow she gets taken back? Oh. Okay, that was a lot less scary than I was assuming. But it's really scary because it's like, I don't have children and I'm not planning on having children anytime soon. But if I was a parent, that would scare the absolute shit out of me. Because it's like, as a parent, your children are the life of your world. And if they were gone, like in an instant, and you didn't know where they were, that would scare the absolute shit out of you. It would for me anyways, but let me go to the comments and see what people have said. I should have went to the comments on the other stories, but I didn't. Good to know. I can always nip into the back rooms at JCPenney. Hope this doesn't put off for photography. Definitely a lovely hobby to have. The penny rooms. Nice. it's more like a strange mirror dimension. Yeah, that's what I was saying, like a pocket dimension. I think I said that in this one, didn't I? I don't remember. Maybe I said that in the other one, but man, this I think if I had to rank the stories so far, it would be the Can You Hide game. It would be, what were the other ones? It would be If You See a Searchlight Too Soon, Attention Shoppers, and then Parents Don't Let Your Kids Hide in Clothes Racks. In terms of like scariest to least scariest. But man,